This video will cover mostly 4-14 notes, but also number 6 on 4-13. So we talked about similar triangles and how we match things up. So when we do these now, we have to practice making sure you match up the sides that actually are in the same location from shape to shape. So when we look at number 6, we notice, here's what's hard about parallelograms. This 2 is in between a 1 mark and a 2 mark. Okay, again, those show what angles match. Well, when we look over here, the 3 and the X are both between 1 mark and 2 mark. So one way you can look at it is like left to right, or hopefully we can just tell size-wise. Obviously 2 is smaller than 8, and over here 3 is smaller than what the X is. So when I do these problems, I actually always find my X first, just because I know that's what I need to find, because sometimes they'll give you extra information. So I know that X is in the same spot as the 8. So my first fraction is going to be X over 8. Now, you can do these lots of different ways, but the way I'm going to do it is I always find my X first and find what that matches up with. Since I did X first, I need to go back and use the 3 over here and then the 2 on the bottom. So when you have your proportion, make sure your similar figures are across, or your same figure is across from each other. So X and 3 are in the same shape and 2 and 8 are in the same shape. So those need to go across from each other. Once you have the proportion set up, again, it's just solving like what we've been doing. So 2x is equal to 24. So x is equal to 12 for your final answer for number 6. Then we'll look at number 7. So again, here we have all the numbers and we don't need them. Some people are able to tell just by how things have been flipped or turned. I'm not very good at that, so I always look at the markings. So my x, I notice, is in between the square and then the 1 congruent mark. So I look over here, here's the square, and here's the 1 congruent mark. So I'm using 11.25 to match up with x. So x over 11.25. The other one is totally up to you. Some people use the 8 because it's smaller. Some people use the 17 because it's easier to find because you know it's across from the right angle. I'm going to use the 8 just because it's smaller. So I notice the 8 is between the square and the 2. So here's square and here's 2, so 6. So 8 over 6. Again, it has to be 8 over 6 because 8 and x are in the same triangle. When I solve this, I multiply and get 6x equals 90, divide, and x equals 15. Number 8, here's my x. Now, I can look at the marks on this one, but I also notice it's the only one that's diagonal, so I know it's going to be the 14. But just to double check, here's 1, here's 2, here's 1, here's 2. So I did that correctly. So I'm going to put x over 14. And then again, it's up to you. I'm going to use the 15 because it's smaller. 15 is between the 1 and the square, so that matches up with the 10. Once I get them matched up, then I just cross multiply. 10x is equal to 210. Divide, and I get x equals 21. Number 9, here's my x. It's between 1 and 3. So over on my other one, 1 and 3, 24 is between that. So x over 24. Since there's no other numbers, I know I'm using 28 and 21, but again, the order that you put your second fraction in absolutely matters. Since I used the x first, I need to come back and use the 28 on top here, and then the 21. So I multiply and get 21x equals 672. Divide, and x equals 32. For number 10, this one's a little bit tricky, but it actually shouldn't be too bad because if you notice here, 30 and 30 match and 16 and 16 match. So it actually doesn't matter what location they're in because you know that this and this are actually the same. So we know that the x is the longer side, so that matches up with the 30. And then the 5 is the shorter side, so that matches up with the 16. So then I can cross multiply. 16x is equal to 150. Divide, and we would get x equals 9.375. And if you want to change that to a fraction, that's 9 3/8. So again, find the x, figure out which one it matches up with, and then find two more that match up for your other fraction. These next ones are a little bit trickier, and here's what I'm going to suggest. Notice there's no markings on this one. So it's going to be really important that you go back and look at the writing they give you, the letters they give you. So when we have this, they're telling us to find ST. I'm going to go ahead and put my X right there. Some people like to completely separate the two triangles, and I'll show you that after we do the first one without separating them. But if we can just look at how it's drawn right now, ST is what we're going to find, so I'm going to call that X. If you want to just write ST up there, that's fine. It just gets a little bit more confusing that way. So ST, and we can probably tell by the picture, is in the same spot as this 48. To make sure, though, you go back and look at the letters as they're given to you. ST is your first letter and your last letter, so that's P and R. So we were correct. PR is 48. So we know those two match up correctly. And then the only other part of our smaller triangle that we know, so the one that has X in it, is 25.6. And that is from S to Q. So when I look back at my writing, SQ are my first two letters. So the first two letters in the bigger triangle is PQ. So that's from here all the way to here. Well, they don't tell us that amount. They tell us from P to S is 38.4 and S to Q is 25.6. So I need to add those two together, which gives me 64. So 64 is the number that I need to put on the bottom. So again, making sure you realize what numbers they give you and what numbers you need to use. Sometimes you're going to have to add or subtract for these. So when I cross multiply, 64x is equal to 1,228.8. Divide by 64. Now instead of putting x equals, we're going to put ST equals 19.2. And it's fine to have these as decimals. If you want to do 19 and 1/5, you can. But 19.2 is fine since there were decimals in the problem. But please don't put x equals, put ST equals since that's what they asked us to find. Now, if you want to redraw this, let me erase everything I've put on there so far. You can actually redraw this, and it doesn't have to look completely correct. S, T, and Q. We know we have 25.6, and then X is what we're trying to find. And then the other triangle, this is not a triangle. So we know we don't need that shape. We need the whole big shape. So we would have P, Q, and R. So then I would fill in 48, and then again I had to add those two together to get 64. So if you want to take the time to separate your two triangles, it might be helpful to do that. All right, our last one, they're already separated, but honestly, it's kind of hard to tell how it's been turned and flipped and whatever else. Don't just guess, use the letters. So they are asking us to find DE. I'm going to put an X there. So X over. DE are my last two letters there. So my last two letters here are GH. So that's this one, 11 2/3. Now, sometimes we were changing them to decimals. You can't change that to a decimal because it's repeating. So you have to use 11 2/3. All right, again, you get to pick if you want to use 6 or 8. I'm going to use the 6 because it's smaller. Now, I can guess which one it is, and I don't really need to guess. 6 is smaller than 8. 10 is smaller than 13 1/3. So you can do it that way, or again, go back and look at your letters. 6 is between C and E, so we need to find F to H, which is the 10. So then this second fraction is 6 over 10. So I cross multiply. 10x is equal to 70. So I get DE, don't write x equals DE equals 7 for your final answer. So again, still setting up a proportion, but being able to match up the sides is what is important. And then whatever order you put your first fraction in, make sure you also put your second fraction in that order as well.